All right, so let's go ahead and create our first React app. Just as a reminder, if you skipped the previous video and you don't know React, I would skip this section. Just want to hammer that home once again, so I don't have any lost souls. You have to know React you should know React to make any sense of this section. Okay, so we left off by talking about this command, create React app. This is the plain old create React app JavaScript version, but if we add -- template TypeScript, it will make the TypeScript flavored version for us that is already set up to compile TypeScript. It has tsconfig file for us. It is just a very easy way to get started. Now, we don't have to provide a folder name if you don't want to. You can provide dot if you want it to create its app in your current directory. It just depends on where you're running this. But I'm in an empty folder. I might have a couple of these depending on how badly I mess up recording this. So I'm not going to do it in the current folder. I'm going to do npx-create React app, and I'll just call this, I think we're going to make a shopping list. So let's call this shopping app and set your expectations very low. It's basically a to-do list, but we got to just do some basic app, and then -- template, and then TypeScript, just like this. And this will take a little while. It always does. So it makes me a new React app, and it tells us this might take a couple minutes. So I hope I don't have to keep talking. I think maybe, just maybe, I'll edit this out. Woo, we're done. Well, we're done installing. All right, so we now have this directory shopping app. I'll cd into it, and I'm going to do two things. One is that I'm going to open it in VS Code. Here we are. We got a whole bunch of stuff in here. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. And then I'm also just going to run npm start to start up my dev server. And that should open up the browser for me. And here is our application. We see the basic home page, or the initial starting template from Create React App, although it does say .tsx instead of .jsx because it is the TypeScript version of Create React App. So let's talk about what that means. First of all, we have our regular old Create React App setup where we've got an app component in an app file. That's what we're seeing right here. We've got an index file, right, that renders app. If you're not familiar with any of this Create React App, I would take some time to just play around with it on your own with plain old React, but hopefully this isn't the first time you're seeing Create React App. Anyway, this index file renders our app component. We can change all of this. We don't have to use that structure. And then we've got our package.json. And what do we have in here? We have the usual suspects, React, React DOM, React scripts, but then TypeScript and types for React DOM, @types React, @types Node, @types Jest for testing. We're not going to touch that right now. But all of this is types, right? All different type declarations from that definitely typed repository. So TypeScript is already set up here behind the scenes. When I run npm start, there's Webpack that's involved. It's actually transpiling or compiling our code from TypeScript to JavaScript, and then Webpack bundles it, just like what we saw in the previous section. But we don't have to write all that crazy stuff ourselves, thankfully. It's all taken care of. So I don't even need to run the tsc command, just to be clear. Where's my terminal? There it is. I just run npm start, and any code that I write in TypeScript, like if I go to my app.tsx and I do something super basic like console.log hello from TypeScript, and we'll talk about TSX in a moment, but all you need to know for now is that I can write TypeScript in here. Let's write something that is actually TypeScripty, like const num has to be a number. It's equal to that. And it's going to complain to me, it's just saying I'm not using it. So let's also print out num. So we know this is not valid JavaScript. It is valid TypeScript. I don't have to compile it myself. Create React App is doing that for me. If I open up the console here, there we are. Hello from TypeScript. And we get 1, 2, 3 printed out, which is our typed variable. So I'm going to delete that. That's just proof that we don't have to compile this ourselves. That is what running npm start does, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. It's all thanks to Webpack. So that is a key difference when we're using Create React App with TypeScript. Unlike the rest of this course, we don't have to manually run the tsc command at any point. Additionally, there is a tsconfig.json that's already set up for us. You can change this. You can add on your own options. It is a little slimmer. It doesn't have all those comments from the one that we see when we run tsc init. But you'll see, it says to use the source directory, include the source directory. What else do we have? We see The lib includes DOM. Target right now is ES5, which is fine. And I think that's all we really need to do in this file. There's all those other options you can tweak and add in if you want, but that's just the pre-configured tsconfig.json we get from create React app with this TypeScript template. Okay, so now let's talk about the source directory. The public directory has nothing to do with TypeScript, right? We just put our assets in there. We've got our index.html that it includes everything together, but there's nothing TypeScripty in here. This is also where you could put some assets, images, for example. But this source directory has all sorts of .tsx files. Now I'm going to simplify things. I'm going to get rid of our test files. So that one can go away. Goodbye. Because we're not going to write any tests. We can get rid of that logo shortly. We can get rid of setup tests. Okay, so now let's talk about the TSX files. TSX is just the TypeScript flavor of JSX, which of course allows us to write JavaScript with this HTML templating syntax that we use all the time in React, but we're using the TypeScript flavor of that. So I can write all my regular old TypeScript code that we already saw a little taste of that, but I can also use JSX syntax and write templates like that. Although this is just floating in the middle of nowhere, I'm going to get an error. There is one time we have actually talked about TSX earlier when we covered generics. If you remember, we talked about, you could write some generic function called func, and we can make it a generic, accept some type T, and then let's just say it returns something of type T. All right, so to accept some parameter x of that type T, it returns x. It's just like an identity function. It doesn't do anything. And that works fine in TSX. But if I tried to make this an arrow function, we do run into a problem. So if I rewrote this as const func equals this arrow function, we get this unexpected token problem. And what we actually have to do is add on a trailing comma here. And then, I'm not actually writing a valid arrow function yet. So I would need to add in the arrow. And you can see it's auto-completing, thinking that I'm writing a JSX template or a tag. I'm not trying to do that. So the trailing comma will calm down all those errors. So you don't need that normally, but if you're in a TSX file, you do, or you can avoid that entirely by just writing a function definition that's not an arrow function, as we saw earlier. Anyway, so that's one tiny difference with TSX, but otherwise we can just use regular TypeScript directly in these files. And of course, we're going to be writing React components. And so we need to work with some of those React types and hooks. And we're going to cover all of that in the next few videos. But for now, we have a basic skeleton and we have TypeScript up and running. We've got our server going. We make a change over here. All right, let's change this, get rid of that logo. Let's really just get rid of all this. Maybe put an H1 in there that says, hello world. Save, and over here in my browser, it automatically is updated. It rebundled. Well, actually, it compiled TypeScript first, then bundled everything together, and then we see this auto reload in the browser. Okay, so next up, we're going to write our first component.